Bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. Rachel Reeves is expected to say that there are no shortcuts to driving the economic growth in her first budget as Chancellor tomorrow. The teenager accused of stabbing to death 3 young girls in Southport is facing 2 new charges after police found a biological toxin and an Al-Qaeda training manual in his home. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 93 people in northern Gaza and at least 60 people in eastern Lebanon. The attacks come as Israel passed a law banning the UN's Palestinian aid agency, UNRWA, from operating in the country. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the political journalists Theo Underwood and Carolyn Quinn. Welcome and great to see both of you. So let's see what's on the front pages then, starting with the Metro. It leads with the separate terror charges faced by Southport murder suspect Axel Rudikubana after police said a biological toxin was found in his home. The Telegraph also reports on the additional charges faced by the 18-year-old. The new charges against the teenager are also on the front page of tomorrow's Daily Mail. Well, The Guardian has the same story on the Southport suspect. Also featuring on the front of the Daily Mirror, as Rachel Reeves prepares to deliver her first budget tomorrow, the Financial Times reports that today government borrowing costs hit their highest level since the election. And on the front of the Eye, the Chancellor's increase of the minimum wage by nearly 7% from April ahead of tomorrow's budget. And meanwhile, The Star writes cats and dogs are just like humans in that they hate ageing. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Theo and to Carolyn. Let's look ahead to the budget, shall we? Most people might feel they know quite a lot about what's in it. Anyway, some new stuff, not least Rachel Reeves has spoken, which we'll come on to in a minute. And secondly, earlier today, Carolyn, we finally found out what will happen to the minimum wage, and it's a big hike.
Yeah, it is. 6.7% wage rise for lower earners. We can see it on the front of the Eye. Millions face painful tax increases, though, is the other side of that. Now, as you say, this was one of the measures in the budget that we thought might come, was a possibility, and has been pre-announced. Now, what will the Speaker of the House of Commons think of that? Because Lindsay Hoyle is already a bit hacked off, shall we say, about some of the announcements already coming out. But we've now got that. We know about the VAT on school fees and non-dom changes, the crackdown on tax evasion, which have been well announced in advance. But, of course, now we're waiting for those final measures and those big measures that will raise the taxes and bring in the money that Rachel Reeves is saying that she needs, because those measures I've mentioned already, bring in about £9 billion. We're hearing that she needs £35 billion through tax rises or spending cuts to balance the budgets. And the IFS was saying during the election campaign that there was a conspiracy of silence over how much there would be a need for tax rises and spending cuts. So tomorrow is going to be the moment of reckoning.
Well, we call it embargoed words. They've been released at just a few moments ago. Rachel Reeves will pledge to put more pounds in people's pockets to fix the NHS and grow the economy. She will say there are no shortcuts to driving the economic growth that Labour has promised to deliver other than to invest. Because crucially, apart from being possibly the biggest tax-taking budget we have ever seen, she's also changing the fiscal rules in order to borrow more money. Now, the accusation against Labour has always been that they're tax and spend. She seems to be doing both in this budget.
Yes, and just to pick up on, Rachel Reeves there saying, Keir Starmer during the general election campaign, adamant that they wanted to go for economic growth. Economic growth comes from businesses taking on new employees, paying them a decent wage, and then, of course, those employees can pay tax, which then leads to higher revenue. So 0.5% uptick in GDP, you're looking around an extra £30 billion in revenue coming into the Treasury. But, of course, with this increase in the national minimum wage up to £12.21, 6.7%, it is going to be businesses that are going to have to bear the cost of that. And if you're looking at splitting the national insurance, which is, of course, a potential breach of the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, because they said they weren't going to increase national insurance. Now it's looking like it's going to go up for employers' contributions. It is going to be businesses who are going to bear the brunt of this budget. And are they going to, when they're coming down, when it comes down to brass tacks, and they're thinking about taking people on, are they going to be willing to take on new employees with the added cost of the national minimum wage going up and, of course, the national insurance contributions? And that's a gamble for Rachel Reeves because, of course, while wages are going up, people, you know, with this measure, the government would hope that people would feel better off. It only works if businesses are able to grow, set up shop. You know, can that business go from somebody coding in their own bedroom to being a new tech startup? Those are the sort of decisions that people want to, you know, small businesses are looking at, and whether they're willing to do it.
Yes, the big businesses probably, you know, they know what's coming. They've got the measures in place. They'll say, well, we welcome this. We want to treat our workforce, you know, correctly. But as you say, for a small business, they've got big decisions ahead of them. And while Rachel Reeves, you know, she's got a number of gambles on her hands, hasn't she? She's got to reassure people, as you say, Theo, that things are going to get better after a difficult start and that there will be improved public services and people will feel that they're not being taxed in their pockets and their pay packets. Also, how can her new fiscal rule changes and increased borrowing, what effect will that have? Could that risk spooking the market?
Well, let's look at the FT while you speak.
Yeah.
Do carry on. Anyway, their headline is UK borrowing costs hit a post-election record on the eve of Reeves' first budget. But do continue.
Well, that's the point. It's the gamble. Maybe not now, but if the borrowing is increased, as Rachel Reeves has now allowed herself to do, up to 50 billion, although she's not expected to use all of that after changing her borrowing rules. But it could potentially lead to maybe higher interest rates in future, higher mortgage rates. So people will be watching that very, very carefully, and the markets will be watching. Of course, the argument about announcing it beforehand is that it doesn't spook the markets in the way that the Liz Truss changes did when they came with no warning. At least the markets have had time to get used to this.
Which is maybe why they've told us so much information about what's coming.
I mean, what the FT is reporting, the 10-year yield is as high as 4.3%. Yesterday, and that's the highest since June. But Ed Conway, your economics editor, in his report pointed to the fact that actually the current, those current bond yields, they're actually within the normal range. If you look at what happened 2 years ago with Liz Truss's budget, and suddenly they were, the yields spiked in a response to that mini budget, it was a very different picture. But absolutely, to Carolyn's point, everybody is going to be looking closely at what happens to, government borrowing, the cost of government borrowing, because if you're paying, if the government is spending extra on borrowing more money in the form of higher interest rates, then that, of course, is going to mean that's money that can't be spent on the NHS or can't be spent on invested in public services, but also the knock-on effect that's going to have on mortgage rates as well. If the government has to turn, if we end up with the impact of that being felt across the board, and whether people actually and there have been some warnings that you could see interest rates go up by another 0.5 percentage point, while the trajectory at the moment, of course, has been downwards. That would be a disaster. I don't think we're in that place. Not yet. But that is something that will be at the back of the minds of mandarins in the Treasury.
So more words from Rachel Reeves that have been released now. An economy that is growing, creating wealth and opportunity for all, because that is the only way to improve living standards, and the only way to drive economic growth is to invest. And clearly the government will invest, but so too they want private firms to invest alongside them. And as you have pointed out, they'll be clobbered by employers' national insurance, by the rising minimum wage, and by workers' rights rules changes, which we've already had. In the meantime, What about the rest of us in terms of taxes? Capital gains tax on shareholders, possibly, inheritance tax changes. Certainly all over social media, farmers are stating their case already, waiting to see what will happen there.
And the thresholds.
And the thresholds, which is a really big amount of money.
The old stealth tax.
The old stealth tax.
Raising its
the
head
Conservatives said, you know, thresholds frozen until 2028, expectation, or it will go up to 2030, which is a long time for thresholds to be held. And, you know, it stops people taking on extra work, is the point, isn't it, with these cliff edges? In the meantime, any gainers? Let's take a look at the department here. Ministry of Defence, Carolyn. Chancellor gives the Armed Forces a £3 billion boost. This is the Telegraph.
Yeah, but it's still not the 2.5% of GDP that has been promised. So I think the armed forces will say, well, thank you very much for the £3 billion boost, but it's still not what we've been asking for. Keir Starmer last week said that he would set out plans for hitting the figure in due course, but he hasn't given future details about when. And I think it just reminds us that we hear a lot about money going into the NHS, and Wes Streeting has been out today. Tomorrow, no doubt, there'll be proclamations about how much is going into the NHS. What about the unprotected departments? We're mentioning defence here, where they've got some sort of commitment, it looks like. But what about local government? And what about justice? And they are braced for difficult times ahead.
Well, let's see if we can find the answer to that in the double-page spread in the Times, which lists nearly everything that we know so far, including employers' national insurance, if I read down the column, freeze income tax thresholds, which you've just brought up, capital gains tax, inheritance tax, private schools, non-DOMs, private equity, minimum wage, we've just discussed, is the new thing today, fiscal rules, the changes to that to allow them to borrow, the NHS, we know they're going to get billions more, housing as well, 500 million extra given to Angela Rayner. Benefits as well. Rachel Reeves warning of difficult decisions on welfare and will press ahead with Tory cuts to incapacity benefits, for example. And transport too. The Chancellor expected to give the go-ahead to bring HS2 to Euston after the London element of the line from Old Oak Common was scrapped. We kind of knew about that as well, didn't we? Yes. Why do we know so much about what's in this budget? Are they scared about the reaction?
I think what the government is trying to do is that they wanted to make sure that they had that lead-in, so they're going to put their figures through the OBR so they could review their complete plans. And what has happened, of course, is that has led to a significant lead-in. They could easily have done this budget towards the end of September. Of course, there would have been probably a bit of a clash with the party conference season. But you're quite right to say that by going long with this budget, by trying, you know, by portraying it, you can see the upside, portraying it as a complete review of the finances, the inheritance, the black holes. They've been able to do all of those things and set, you know, the narrative. But actually, what's happened is that by leaving it so late, that actually they've lost a consistent message about what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. And I think that's problematic. And of course, it has just opened up this, continually people asking, well, what about this or what about that? Giving everybody the chance to lobby for their particular interest. And that is problematic because I think there are just going to be many unhappy people by tomorrow afternoon.
Including, I was just going to say, including Jeremy Hunt, because the Office for Budget Responsibility is looking into the £22 billion black hole, and he's got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, he says that the OBR is at risk of taking sides and being political by producing its report, and that it will be used by Rachel Reeves to justify her argument about a £22 billion black hole.
Carolyn, I need to move on if you don't mind. We've got lots more to pack in the next part of our programme, including Russia and Ukraine are reportedly in talks to stop striking each other's energy plants during the winter. Discussing that and plenty more after this.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. Sky News, the full story first.
I'm Martin Brunt and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
I'm David Blevins.
and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world, the likes of Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Sir Elton John. We try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Theo Underwood and Carolyn Quinn. Welcome back to both of you. Theo, let's go back to the Financial Times, shall we? And this is about the Ukraine war, but specifically the suggestion that Kyiv and Moscow are in talks to stop striking each other's energy plants as winter looms, which in itself is, seems an extraordinary development.
Yes, it's a fascinating development being reported on the front of the FT, saying Kyiv was seeking to resume Qatar-mediated negotiations that were taking place before August, in August, but were derailed by Ukraine's invasion of Kursk, but now they're looking to reignite those talks in order to ensure that there's some sort of agreement with Moscow. Obviously, winter looming, particularly cold right across Eastern Europe, to ensure that there's some sort of tacit agreement that they don't strike each other's energy facilities, which of course would have a huge knock-on effect on their respective populations. I mean, is it going to be a moment where actually this could be built upon to try and find some resolution? Of course, very much in the minds, in everybody's minds, certainly in trying to find some sort of negotiation. It's about, what happens in next week's election, US election.
Yes, well, let's talk about the US election, shall we? We're in the closing arguments phase, we're told. Madison Square Garden was the choice for Donald Trump. We've got Kamala Harris expected outside the White House in the very spot where Donald Trump rallied his troops, one might say, before January the 6th. Trump and a Reich messes the Mirror's take on this, accusations of, racism, which might have an impact on certain demographic groups in the election, Carolyn.
Yes.
There has been a lot of fallout, hasn't there, from the Madison Square Garden big Trump rally where Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian, talked about a big floating island of garbage. That's Puerto Rico. And obviously there has been a lot of complaint about that from Republicans as well as from Democrats and from people who feel personally affected by that. When Donald Trump gave his news conference in Mar-a-Lago, he didn't apologise for that. And that's very much in the Trump playbook, isn't it? You know, never explain, never apologise. But he has tried to counter some of these other allegations. For example, his former chief of staff, John Kelly, a really well-known and well-respected military figure, had said that Donald Trump he did have fascist ideals, or he believed in fascist ideals. He has said now, Donald Trump, I am the opposite of a Nazi. He's forced to deny accusations that he's a fan of Adolf Hitler.
Carolyn, Theo, great to see you both. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. More from both of you in the 11. Plenty more coming up too of Kamala Harris's rally in Washington as she makes what could be one of her final pitches to voters.
Significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.